Good morning, everybody. So this is my side of the play test that I'm doing with Brian, otherwise known as General Hand Grenade. I'm set up. We're going to play by video throughout the weekend and possibly into next week. And I'm just going to give my perspective on my tactics and what I'm going to do. I'm playing the Central Powers. I'm going to put all of my effort really into Europe, with minimal activity out in the colonies. Just don't think that Germany can expend too much effort in that direction. But I am going to make sure that I do give him cause to turn around and protect his sea lanes using submarines and the cruiser rules. And I will also attempt to create some chaos down there, at least in the north of Africa. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you how I'm doing it over time. I think the biggest thing I'm going to concentrate on is taking out the Russians. The more Russians I can destroy, not exactly a lot of money, but some. But also, I just don't think taking Paris in the first year or two of the game is realistic, even with some of the additional rules that we put into place. But I do know that the more I can crush Russia, the more likely it is that I can persuade the Italians to join my side. So that's my initial push, is Russia first. And I'll give you an update later today. So it's the end of the prequel, and what has happened? Well, General Hand Grenade really piled into Mexico, and the revolutionaries won that pretty quickly, but the Germans pretty much gave it up too. It wasn't really their focus, but Germans did align Cuba, and so we've got a raiding cruiser down there, and then not much has taken place in Africa at all, although the Germans and the British Navy have moved pieces down there. Real big changes, though. The Ottomans took over Serbia and Bulgaria. They crushed the Balkan League in that part of the prequel. So maybe that's the penalty for my opponent spending so much time in Mexico. France did align Romania. That's going to be very painful to have to deal with. And as we look over on the other side, now some interesting things. So there was a random event that caused Russia and Japan to fight a limited war. But because Japan is sitting in Primorsky Krai, they're not going to align to the Entente at the beginning of World War I. So that is going to play well into the Central Powers' hands, even though Japan is relatively a weak country. Also, what may aid in that is China fragmented. You can see all the warlords spread out around the rest of China, and China really only consists of 6 territories, and that is really not going to help the Entente at all. Some building took place, and we're going to see the Western Front square off. But overall, I'm very pleased. A lot of naval building is taking place by the Central Powers. I think they have a real shot going into World War I. Before I forget, there's one last thing I want to point out. The alignment of Italy would be pretty fantastic if we could get them into the Central Powers side. One of the things that's a big determinant on whether Italy joins the Central Powers or they join the Allies is how many Russian cities have fallen, which at this time is none, and how many troops are in Austria, which at this time is also next to none, minus the seaplane. So I've got to devise a strategy, get as many soldiers into Austria as quickly as possible this turn, because next turn that decision is made. It's made with the roll of a die, and it's pretty central to whether or not the Central Powers can be effective, I think, in have an overwhelming victory. So I'll give you an update next time I record. At the end of the summer of 14, this is how things are looking. It's a little disconcerting that German and British are at the same income level. The Central Powers have done a little bit better with diplomacy, but not as well as I would like. I'm watching the British build up in Egypt. It's going to be very challenging. The Ottomans are not going to be able to fight in multiple directions. They've already been kicked out of Transcaucasia. Got a huge British showing in India. The Japanese are not going to be able to combat that, as well as the looming American threat. Probably the most significant thing that I want to point out, these Russians right here in Galicia against a very thinly held line of Austro-Hungarians. I don't know if the Germans are going to be able to get down here in any large showing, especially when they're fighting for their life off of East Prussia, which almost got taken this turn, held on by a hair. They've been kicked out of Picardy in Belgium, which are being held by the British and French. The only bright spot was the destruction of the British Navy. May be able to move some ships out here and keep the British outside. Although, of course, the French, here they come to save the day. And I'm not sure that the Germans can, again, fight in every single direction, but that is the historic problem. So even though history is turning out differently, we'll have to see how it goes. Got these very pesky Italians up here. Austrians can't do it, then the Ottomans have to hold at least this bit. So we'll see how it goes from this point forward. At the end of 1915, thank goodness winter's here, and combat is limited this round.